a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. We have a motion to approve the October 18th, 2021 minutes.
So moved.
I'll second.
Seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Item 4, Cambria Hills report and discussion.
So Ray Fugley of Certus, the court-appointed receiver for Cambria Hills, reported to staff on November 8th that the facility continues to generate interest in their attempts to sell or lease the building. They are focusing their efforts on reopening the facility as a psychiatric residential treatment facility, which is consistent with the conditions of the conditional use permit approved for the use of this site. They have reported that they are having active discussions with qualified and experienced PRTF operators, but they do not have a letter of intent in place as of the 11th of November. They do anticipate that a potential operator will be in contact with the city shortly, and Certus will make an introduction of any potential purchasers to the city, so we're aware of their interest prior to actually sitting down and talking with them. On a related matter, the Minnesota Department of Health and Human Services has adjusted their rate setting formula. This formula is yet to be published, but it is a helpful change, and it will make this facility more attractive to a psychiatric residential treatment facility. End of my report. If anyone has any questions.
Well, sounds like it's positive. And from what we can tell, it's kind of being kept in the dark, but with a little light just shined right here. But it's something. It's at least good to hear that some facilities are interested.
Moving forward.
Yeah.
Are we open to the idea, or are, is the person promoting this open to the idea that someone may want to do something different with the property?
Yeah, they are. They're aware of that, but I do know that Certus mostly deals with the medical fields, like this type of use. So I know that's what they're marketing it as.
Yeah, it'd be great if they want to use it for the same thing, but I did learn that the facility up in Duluth, someone bought it to run it as a Catholic school. I don't know what levels, but I think we'd rather it were utilized. Obviously, it'd be great if someone comes in and does the same thing with it, but obviously they ran into challenges with that before, so it's hard to know if that couldn't happen again.
Yeah. From my understanding is the way they constructed it, it'd be very hard to repurpose it except for the use it was intended for. Not to say that couldn't be, but that's just what I've heard, and that's why they're.
I think there'd be some challenge. I agree.
Even I could see it being a small campus of some sort, because you got the rooms, you have a gymnasium, you have a lunchroom, you have classrooms, but that's just what I've heard, though.
I agree, Catherine. It would be good to see it be used for similar or likewise use. That's why we invited them to the city, and I learned that it was such a small number of facilities in the whole state that offers that type of service, so it would be good to see similar use. Good. Well, thank you for the update. Do we have any other discussion? Thank you, Stephanie. Move to item 5, Marketing and Economic Development Report.
This report is for October through November 12th of this year. So the Banana Gold Country Hearth site on Ulysses, that project is on schedule. You go by, you see them building, anticipated for completion in March of 2022. And we also have aggressive hydraulics right next to that site. on Ulysses. That project's also on schedule with completion of next spring. Then we have Elevage Second Edition, which is on the east side of 65, where Quick Trip is going to go. We're hoping that the developer is preparing to submit the second edition plans by the end of this year, so we'll see at the very first of next year, start working on the phase 2 of that project. East Bethel Village Apartments phase 2. The developer is projecting that the building's complete by December of this year. However, staff is working with them to complete punch list items such as parking lot lighting, landscaping, as-built, and also finalizing the building. And a little bit of update on this. So on November 9th, the Minnesota Department of Public Safety did send a letter to the contractor, which stated the requirement that the garage needs sprinkler protection in there. So originally, the developer did not have plans to sprinkle the garage. At this point, the developer is working with the state fire marshal to come into compliance, and they said they will do so. And the certificate of occupancy cannot be issued until that's taken care of, and then, and also all the other punch list items are complete. So we see the end in sight, but should be within the next month or
Is there a
two.
parking garage on their first building?
Yes, there is. Yeah, there was a code change in between the two buildings were being constructed.
So it only affect the phase 2 garage?
Yes, yep.
Those
Okay, I
aren't-
guess it's been a while since I've had to deal with UBC, but I guess I've built a number of buildings, and yeah, they always had to have, the parking garages were always fire protected.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm surprised it didn't have it, so.
yeah, there's
That's your
a
first.
couple of different ways how you do it.
And those aren't heated buildings, are they? So they'll probably have to do a dry line or something. But-
No, yeah.
No, you don't have heat in, they get residual heat. They
Right.
usually stay above freezing, but you have to have a dry system and a dry pendants, they call them. And, okay, I was just curious, how come
Yep, slight code change.
pardon?
There was a code change.
Yeah,
That's unfortunate for them, that's surprising. I assume the punch list includes balconies?
Yes.
Okay.
And then also that fire road too, so they have to have a fire access road on the south side of the building to access the back of that new building. So we're working with them on that right now as well.
Okay. Good.
Next thing is building permits. So good news, the city's issued 40 single-family home building permits through October of this year. The city issued 40 building permits last year, which was the highest total since 2006. So this year we have even higher than that, 48 so far. And then also, as of last Friday, online permitting is now available on the city website for permits that don't require plan review, which includes roofing, siding, plumbing, fireplaces, HVAC, and doors and windows. So in fact, today we issued our first online permit for roofing. So it took only a couple minutes. The contractor was very happy. Anderson Meadows residential plat. The Anderson Meadows is a 10-lot rural residential plat located on Durant and 213th Street Northwest. The final plat was approved on November 8th. The grading, base paved course, and street appurtenances are complete. One building permit's been issued for the development. And then at the next city council meeting on the 22nd, the city council will be looking at the developer's agreement for that and hopefully approving that. So, and then once that's done, then they can file their final plat with Anoka County.
Can I ask what an appurtenance is?
Jack must have put it on there.
Signs,
Okay.
Okay, that's what it
you
is.
know, accessories.
Accessories. Curb cuts.
Perfect, thank you.
Staff's also been in contact with 2 developers that have shown that have shown interest on properties for residential projects on the east side of 65, south of Viking Boulevard. On November 8th, staff met with a realtor and a potential buyer to discuss the property at Sandhill Parkway and Viking Boulevard. So we have some interest out there on some of our vacant land. And then for broadband meetings, we met with Midco on October 12th to update them on the status of our broadband internet service plan, discuss their 2022 expansion plans, and review opportunities for public and private partnerships for future projects. As a follow-up, staff met with Midco to discuss these projects. Those projects are presented in agenda item 6.0. Staff's been working with Findlay Engineering to provide them with base GIS information to complete their preliminary mapping of the city. And I got the email today that actually our GIS, who we consult with WSB Engineering, they did get the information over to Findlay this afternoon. This information will enable them to present the status of broadband, identify initial areas for need, and begin the process of modeling the proposals to address unserved and underserved areas. Staff will be meeting with Findlay the week of November 29th to receive their initial schedule, and we'll be presenting it to the EDA in hopefully December. And that is all I have for the updates. If you have any questions.
Steph, on the last one, the broadband, are there any communications between Midco and Findlay directly? Or is everything gonna go through us, or?
Yeah, I do know that Midco and Findlay will be contacting each other. I don't know if they have contacted each other as of yet, but I do know they will be working together.
Okay.
Will that discussion be shared with us then? I mean,
Yes.
as a consultant, I assume so.
Any other questions?
I guess I have a question, maybe stating a bit of a conflict, like the Jenkins Street, Briarwood, I think it's Briarwood Lane too, not Drive, but anyway, how do you know what homes those are? Because that's right where I live, but Briarwood Drive isn't where I live quite, it's up the road from us, so it seems like they might leave us out, but then I don't know how they would, have 25 homes if they left us out in that area, because you would have to include all of us in this area, or you wouldn't have 25 homes.
Yeah, I do know when we met with Midco that that area in particular was one that they're looking at for a potential project.
Our neighbors have it, so it would make sense that they'd want to start bringing it up from that point. But it's hard to know.
If there's no more questions, I'm going to turn the next one over to Jack, the broadband, and then the service road frontage plans.
Thank you.
Item 6.0, Anoka County Broadband Grants. In May of 2021, the Anoka County Board of Commissioners allocated $3.15 million in American Rescue Plan dollars to support local broadband projects for the 21 municipalities in the county. At the October 12, 2021 County Board meeting, the board authorized the publication of the application and frequently asked questions related to their ARPA broadband funding program. The summary for their funding program is below in your packet. Communities can apply for a maximum of $150,000 per project. The applicant must match the grant funds on a 50-50 basis. Communities that do not have a need for broadband funding may pass a resolution that their $150,000 appropriation be added back into the program's budget for additional projects where support is needed. Any excess dollars that are returned via resolution will be eligible for secondary projects up to the $150,000 matching funds on a first-come, first-served basis. Based on staff's meeting with Midco on October 12, 2021, there may be projects that could be considered as a public-private partnership venture in 2022 that would be eligible for this grant. The project areas are Jenkins Street, Briarwood Drive, Lane. This is the way they were identified on the Midco. But it does include the neighborhood that you live in, Catherine, which would be a fiber to premise project for 25 homes. Total project cost would be $106,000, require aid in the amount of $31,000 to proceed with the project. Gopher Drive, coaxial project for 7 homes. Total project cost would be $35,000 and require aid in the amount of $15,000 to proceed. 222nd Lane would be fiber to the premise project for 24 homes. The total project cost would be $95,000 and require aid in the amount of $24,000 to proceed with this project. For all 3 projects, 56 homes would be served, and the aid to construction amount from the city would be $70,000. Of the $70,000 local cost, the county grant would cover half this amount, and the city would be responsible for the remainder. Should Midco be able to secure this commitment from the city by the end of February, these projects could be scheduled for their 2022 work plan. Staff also discussed the extension of service to 4 homes west of Klondike Drive and Edison Street intersection as a possible project that would not be able to be scheduled until 2022. To be scheduled in 2022, excuse me. Should the city desire to participate with Midco on these projects, the source of the matching funds would need to be identified, and a fund recovery procedure would have to be established to reimburse the city's cost for the match. Discussion of authorization to submit an application for grant funds for this program was discussed at the November 1st, 2021 City Council work meeting. Council directed staff to contact the county and request clarification on the following questions. An explanation as to the grant eligibility covering total project cost or only aid to construction, contractual options that the city had with Midco, use of grant funds to cover Findlay engineering services for the broadband internet service improvement plan. The city received the county's response on November 10th, 2021. Comments of Chris Carney, Assistant Anoka County Attorney, are as follows. As to the question of the eligibility of grant funds for total project cost or only for aid to construction, he responded that the use appears consistent with the federal guidance with a few caveats. If the internet service provider has other funding or federal assistance available for a portion of the project, the county's ARPA grant would not overlap the ISP's funding. However, the grant could help to bridge the gap so long as the city provides matching funds for the requested grant amount in a 1-to-1 match. In an example of a $100,000 project with a $20,000 gap in funding, there would need to be $10,000 city dollars to fund the project to apply for a $10,000 federal grant under the county's program. So the grant monies only cover that portion that's aid to construction if Midco or the ISP is putting up a certain amount of the project. In regards to contractual options with Midco, it was brought up, could we contract with Midco to do the work? There is a section C5 in your frequently asked questions attachment that says that whoever does this has to be an approved ISP provider in the state. However, in Mr. Carney's opinion, the city could do this, but still need to follow federal procurement requirements referenced in section D and E, paragraphs 14 and 17 in your attachments. Direct selection of a subcontractor is generally not acceptable under the federal uniform guidance unless there is documented justification showing that direct select is the only economical way in which the project could be completed. So there is a possibility that we could contract with Midco in certain situations with us being the prime contractor. We'd have to get the clarification made, though, that we're not operating the system. Midco is the operator. And if that's done, then it's possible to do that. I did do some comparisons that I'll introduce later that show where even if we did that, it still may be best just to go for the gap financing. The third question, could we use the grant funds to pay for the Findlay engineering services for the broadband internet service plan? And the answer to that is nearly a complete yes. There's a few things that are in question, but in following up with them, they say, yeah, we can use those as long as we didn't incur any of the cost prior to March 31st this year, which we haven't. So it can be used for pre-planning and engineering. So the $60,000 or $61,000 we had budgeted from the EDA account could come from these grant funds, which means the county would pay for half, the city would pay for half. It would reduce our need for the EDA monies by $30,050. As an example for use of project funds for the example that was given in the first question, the $100,000 project. If we did that, then the city would have to expend $10,000 in their own monies to get the $10,000 match from the county, and Midco would put up $80,000. Assuming we could contract with Midco to do this, then we would pay them $100,000, but then we would have to come up with $50,000 in matching funds to pay for it. When you take the 50%, the split between the county and the city, then we would be looking at $25,000 each. So in that case, it would be more economical just to go ahead and have Midco put their money up and then us supply the aid to construction. These would have to be looked at on a case-by-case basis to ensure that we were maximizing what dollars we could use. So staff at this time is requesting any comments from the EDA or questions about this grant. And we would like a recommendation, if you feel so inclined, to City Council as to requesting them to file an application for these monies.
So we earmarked or budgeted 61,000 for Findlay. They will the county will cover half of that.
Correct.
So that's 30,000 that we'd have left over, if I'm thinking of it right. So it would save us $30,000. Could we then take that 30,000 that we saved and up above for the 3 projects, it'd be $70,000, cut in half, that's 35. Could the savings be applied towards those projects?
They could. In that case, we would only be paying $5,000.
Over what we'd already budgeted?
Correct.
So we wouldn't have to find any new funds in our budget to do at least these?
No, and we'd already budgeted the $61,000 for this, so if you want to look at it in that respect, there would be still another $30,000 that's budgeted money for these types of projects that could come from the EDA. Now, if we wanted to do the whole $150,000, we'd have to find some other sources. But we could do an allocation from our general fund. Let's say we use $60,000 EDA money, $90,000 allocation from the general fund, and we would still be at 44.37 or 4% of our fund allocation balance. We wouldn't jeopardize that at all. Again, though, we just have to find a way or discuss some type of policy on how we're going to address to cover the cost of that. But those are 2 funding opportunities that we have right now, especially with the clearance that we've gotten on the use of EDA funds I'm not EDA, but these grant funds to cover the Findlay contract.
That sounds positive.
So Jack, it looks like, any way we cut it, the city's got to put some funds in.
That's correct.
The kind of the first point was, I think, asked and answered a little differently than how we asked at council, but, so they're totally looking at the construction costs separate.
That's correct.
Okay.
I think at the work meeting too, there was a question asked on this example of the budget for the grant application.
Right.
And they said this is not a good example. They just filled in some columns there to make.
Especially when the city funds say 0, that's not a very good example of their
When they
process.
say the project cost is $100,000, they said, we just did some things there just to make it balanced. This is the way it would look If we were to fill this in for $100,000 project cost would be $100,000. Other funds would be 80, city funds would be 10, and Anoka County funds would be 10.
So for example, the other funds would be
Mid-
Midco contributing.
I guess to me, one of the reasons that we hired Findlay was to give us guidance along these lines, and so with their experience in other LGUs within the industry. We're not getting any input from them on this at this point in time that I'm aware of, correct?
I had a discussion with them and mentioned the possibility of this, and they said, you know, this was a good program, and if they were identifying grant funding projects, this is one that they would probably recommend we pursue.
Okay,
And they haven't done all their studies, but just in general terms.
I understand, I fully understand that, yeah, I get that. I mean, I'm looking at this and, I mean, it's not that I am opposed to improving internet service for residences, especially yours, Catherine. But I always thought, to be honest with you, that one of the goals that we were trying to do was increase the speeds that our businesses were also going to be able to access. And I didn't see this as I mean, right now, this looks like it's a residential subsidy program to me.
Well, that's what we need to clear up, and the council will discuss this further. It doesn't have to be a subsidy program. In other words, if the city puts in $10,000, let's say the cost of these three projects, just these numbers are easy to work with, is $100,000. The city puts in $10,000. The city could expect to get that money back. Now, people that would receive this service, let's say that they signed up with Midco without any grant assistance, says, we want you to run this to our house. They're probably gonna pay maybe 3 times that much. They would be able to get the service at a much cheaper price, and then either have it assessed, worked out on their Midco bills, whatever we can do to recover those costs so we can keep this money rolling over. And we did have a brief discussion on that at the work meeting, but we didn't come up with anything finalized. So Steve or Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not really looking at this as a subsidy program, especially with the city funds that we would have to invest as seed money to get this started.
No, and reason why they're residential projects is that those were the first, we asked Midco for projects of what could be done, and these were the first ones that came in front of us as to opposed. We haven't done an analysis of the businesses, ISPs or anything like that, or those speeds, so just putting all this stuff together, this was the first stuff that popped up, and can we do it?
Trying to get the wheel rolling a little bit.
Yes.
I mean, the other thing that caught my eye was 2 out of the 3 projects are fiber. One of them's coax. Granted, the one with coax, I don't know, what is that, 7 houses on it or something like that? Yeah.
And we weren't given a reason for it. We can definitely delve into that, but I'm assuming that the Gopher Drive one, the termination point is coax, and in order to get fiber, they'd have to redo the whole system in through there. And apparently there seems to be enough capacity to serve those homes with that minimum 25 meg download, 3 meg upload speed with the coax.
With the coax.
Which is what we'd have to meet. And then eventually that would have to be scalable to 100 meg download and upload.
Yeah, it was presented as the other ones did not have enough transmissible, or the lines were full. They couldn't support any more residences, and so I suspect that's why they're bringing in new fiber.
In the situation on Jenkins Street that is fed from the east along Deerwood Lane, and when it reaches the last house, that's the end of any capacity that it has. So to service it and get adequate speeds in that neighborhood, it would come in from Central Avenue, Highway 65, along Briarwood, and down Jenkins, and it would be fiber.
Like I said, I just, looking at it, I'm thinking that I'd really like to, you know, I realize we gotta get the ball rolling. I'd like to hear what Findlay has to say about this, to be honest with you. We hired them because they have a lot of expertise. I don't know if we have time to, I mean, you know, it's February that they wanna have a commitment. Correct? Midcode wants a commitment by February.
And, you know, we could probably get something maybe from them, maybe a little earlier than that. And, you know, we could actually go ahead and get the application ready and just wait then for, once we got all the other questions answered, then request approval to submit at that time. I don't think it's gonna take long to approve them. I've been told that 2 cities have already turned the money down. One of them was Fridley, and I think the other one was Columbia Heights, meaning that they pretty well have good service where they are and may not need this nor want to fool with it. So this is, and with any other grant that we get, there's gonna be a lot of administrative work to applying for. It's the easy part, then administering, keeping all the records and doing the audits and complying with the procurement policies and the federal guidelines will require a bit of work on our part.
And Jack, we can keep applying for projects through, is it the end of 2022 or 23?
2023, it's kind of odd if you read the frequently asked questions that the application deadline is December 31st, 2023, and all fund expenditures have to be done by December 31st, 2023. So it's not like it has to be done tomorrow, but we'd like to get some things started on this. So if we do decide to go this direction, all we got to do is push the button.
And that also gives us time with developing more projects based off of Findlay's results. And we could do a second submission, say, for business stuff. So.
I mean, you touched on it, Brian, I mean, part of the challenge that council's gonna have, and we've already started discussing it, is funding it.
Yeah,
And you know, general fund, EDA funds, whatever funds we use, it's, I mean, it's not really a subsidy, but it's using general funds to focus on a few properties, and that's, you know, that's kind of the heartache I know I had, and we had a discussion at council. The other option we're looking at is doing a special assessment, and did we look at that further, whether we can even do a special assessment for broadband?
I haven't run it by Chris yet, but it would be essentially the same thing as a utilities project.
Okay.
If we can do a special assessment, we have a section in our code that addresses that. We just have to send the assessment notices out, have the public hearings, and then council could decide if they want to proceed with it.
So that's a fairer way of trying to raise those funds than the challenge is for, you know, like the 25 homes in Catherine's development, you know, are they all gonna agree to it, you know?
And
But there could be some sort, you know, I was talking with my husband about this, and he's an engineer, and he said, you know, it could be, like maybe if people don't agree on it, they're not signing up right now, but then Midco could turn on that home later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so.
Well,
that
this is just bringing it to the house, you know,
right.
no one has to take it, but
Right.
if it's built out, it's gonna be built out, the whole thing's, means,
Well, right.
you're not gonna get lined into the house, but there'll be a line at the curb, so.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then they're still assessed for it,
Right.
whether they use it or not, so. And if I did my math, you know, if it's just an equal share, it's like $700.
Yeah.
So,
I also contacted the appraiser that we've used in the past on giving us home values for property that we've purchased for projects. And I've asked him to look into the benefits if in East Bethel for homes was exactly equal value for the ones, if he were assessing them, if they had cable internet service or if they had no service.
Okay,
I think once we get that information, in my opinion, I think there's gonna be some significance there in value. So, if we do go to some type of recovery process or special assessment, you know, this is an item that can be used to show you are getting something for it. And it's something we'd have to use to prove that we are adding value.
right, yeah, that's where I was getting at, so.
Jack, with these 3 projects proposed, would these, number one, would we need to do all 3 at once, or could we do one at a time, considering we got some time to do these? And second, is some of the thought of yourself or even council to look at these 3 projects and use this as an example, like this is the investment the city can make, you know, then talk about assessment, you know, down the road as further building this out?
I don't think we'd have to do them all at once. These are projects that Midco says they could get on their schedule. They're looking at them. Currently, they don't have the funds to do any of them now because there's that gap in what their estimated costs are versus what they claim they'll get value out of. So let's say they do a project and it's $100,000 and they estimate they'll get 80,000 of value, they can recover their cost and make a profit. That's the top of their expenditure for it. So we could do 1, we could do 2, we could do 3. Since these all could be done in 1 year and we'd have 56 homes, you know, maybe it's something we want to consider, but we could possibly break that up into smaller units.
Yeah, either which way they'd have to be done before the end date though of 2023 to be eligible for the grant. So approximately 2 years.
And Jack, you said these are the only 3 projects that Midco's ready on.
That's correct.
There's other projects in the city, they're just not ready.
There's other potential projects.
But they would
Right.
fall within this timeline for this grant?
Well, these grant funds have to be spent by December 31st, 2023. So we got 2 years.
Yes, we got 2 years, but could we speed up that timeline for those other projects, which we kind of
If they're identified and they have, it's on their plan schedule, because they gotta generate the funds to pay for their share too. Brian, getting back to your point too, one of the things that Findlay's gonna identify is areas where we currently have service. This is on the business end, and we'll find out there what areas need higher capacities, higher speeds, what are underserved, and those projects will be identified as separate projects from these residential extensions.
Okay.
Do you need any further discussion, Jack, or you're seeking some,
No, and, you know, the only thing is, I think everybody's wanting to sit back and wait just a little bit longer before we pull the trigger on this. One of the things we'll do, we'll just go ahead and start. What we can do on the application now, there may be some things that are more time sensitive that have to be filled out. So if that moment comes that we decide this is the direction we want to go, we'll be ready and can be able to submit this rapidly so we can meet Midco's deadlines if this is a way to get this service and it's the best way to approach it.
Yeah, it reads with the recommendations that staff is looking for recommendations from the EDA as to the filing of this grant. So I would say if anybody has any opinions as opposite, that the city should not go in this direction, I guess this would be an opportunity to voice them. But if you believe that it's a positive way to go, you could also voice that as well. It's just so that there's some feedback to the city and to the council.
And one other thing is, I hope you've got a good appetite for this, because this is gonna be a consistent agenda item for the next little bit. But with what Stephanie's communications was with Findlay today on the GIS stuff. That will enable them to start some preliminary stuff so they can get their schedules to us. And again, we'll be meeting with them hopefully sometime the week after Thanksgiving and get some schedules arranged, and maybe they'll do some basic modeling, and we'll have more detail to report at the next meeting.
Yes, I think hearing their opinions and thoughts on the matter would be very helpful. Thank you. There's no further discussion on that. We'll move to item 7, service frontage road plans.
We discussed this at our work meeting on November the 1st. It's kind of an update on our service road plan. Brian and Steve have heard this. They'll be able to recite it verbatim again after tonight. But I just wanted the EDA to be advised on some of what our plans are, because it definitely relates to our economic development projects. So, to meet our future transportation needs, the city has been and continues to plan for a series of road improvement projects through the year 2040. The city's primary focus for new street infrastructure is the construction of service roads adjacent to and paralleling Trunk Highway 65. The proposed service roads with the highest priority include those from 181st Avenue, which is our border with Ham Lake, to Viking Boulevard. The timing of these extensions will depend on development projects that require access, traffic relief on Highway 65, and connection needs between gaps for Sandhill Parkway. The city will consider infrastructure improvements north of Viking Boulevard as needed to facilitate development and respond to projects required for traffic safety. A summary of our project service road goals and completion are as follows. And I'm just going to concentrate mainly on the existing area where we have utility service, which is from the East Bethel Ham Lake city limits to Viking Boulevard. In this area, we have completed 2.3 miles of our planned service roads. These are the areas shown in black. This is the Sandhill Parkway extension. This is the Taylor Street extension that we did completed 4 years ago. A little section in black here was already done and designated as an MSA street when this was done as part of the classic commercial park, along with this extension of Davenport Street from Briarwood Lane to 181st Avenue. So the only areas we don't have completed in this section now are this section in red. This is Highway 65 Liquors, and this is Doug Osborne's building where Snap Fitness is. The city does have a 66-foot right-of-way between those two facilities, and there is water and sewer that's stubbed over on the east side of the county ditch over to this property. We had some discussion at council. We may want to do all this project as one, and we could eliminate this little stub section here. Or depending on the timing of things, we could do this as necessary, depending on what happens to this property here. None of these alignments are set in stone. They're all subject to some variation depending on the conditions at the time. But these are our priority projects in the area between 181st Avenue and Highway 65. We're working on some cost estimates, rough cost estimates, and trying to come up with just some general financing plans now. Before the city would be in any position to do this, it would be at least a year away before we could consider it. But I don't think that there's going to be any real rush to do anything before then. That would allow us to catch up on some of the advanced funding we've done from our MSA accounts, so that we can keep most of these costs confined to highway department funds. I did talk to the highway department about a potential grant to finish this project off. They didn't say no, they didn't say yes, but we will continue to pursue that possibility with them, it'd be great. This would give us a total completion of this frontage service road all the way from Ham Lake to Viking Boulevard. This extension of Buchanan Street south, this is Shaw Trucking, this is the second apartment building here. To go down and connect with 181st Avenue is probably a lower priority, as it doesn't have a lot of economic development benefit. It would be good to have this as a through street for some additional traffic relief. We've had some discussions with Ham Lake about trying to tie these two intersections up at some point. There's an offset here between their service road and where our proposed service road is shown here. Also, this street may eventually just be extended straight down. The reason it's shown with this dog leg in it is because there's a home here that would have to be acquired. The rest of this property is more or less undevelopable. The biggest problem with this street is probably there's gonna have to be some relocations in Village Green, and that could be quite expensive. So that's kind of an overview where we are with our service road plan for the section where we have water and sewer service. I'll just go up and we'll just look at one more here. And this is the section around Sims Road and Highway 65, which is probably going to be the city's next development node. The only issue with constructing service roads in this area is that utilities would have to be constructed with them. We don't really have anything to support the utilities. There would have to probably be another water tower constructed here and 2 wells and probably another additional treatment plant. So this would be, you know, I hate to give a time frame, but we're probably looking at 5 to 10 years away maybe. But it's something that needs to be, we need to start looking at some of this stuff and having some discussions on this. Again, the roads in black are the service roads that are existing now. On the east side, we have it from essentially from 205th Avenue to 215th Avenue. This is Davenport Street. It's scheduled for a reconstruction project. I think I misspoke in the last one I presented to council. This is scheduled for 2024, so it's 2 years away. Some of the priorities here would be an extension of Johnson Street north across this 40-acre site that's at the southwest corner of Sims and 65 to tie into this little existing section that's constructed here, and either or projects on the east side of 65 north of 215th Avenue. The city does already own this right-of-way here. We own right-of-way from 221st Avenue to this point, and any right-of-way here is expected to be dedicated by the property owner if and when this section is developed. So that's just kind of just a quick overview. I just wanted to make you aware, especially of our plans for the sewer district and the fact that, you know, at some time in the future, there will be further discussions on this node here at Sims and 65. Also, too, we're going to have to look at some water storage issues on the north section of the city. Around 237th Avenue. There's development that's occurring here and future development that will happen. So there's not much in the way of service road plans here because we know that the owners of the property north of 237th Avenue aren't interested in developing at this point. Of course, that could always change. We have somewhat of a service road system in place from 229th Avenue going north. There is one little gap all the way to 241st. There is an area in here from Cedar Creek that's going to be very difficult to cross because of a wide floodplain. There's going to be limited benefit. So we don't really expect at this time, this would be a last priority between 221st and 237th on the east side of any service road. So that's kind of an overview of what our long-range plans are through the 2040 time period. So I just wanted to brief you on that. Council was briefed on it. And it's something that we'll be continually working with to find opportunities to start on our next project.
Jack, I assume that with 2040, it means the comp plan for 2040.
That's correct. That's the comp plan period.
And I assume that some of these projects may have been identified when the comp plan was originally.
Actually, most of these were identified 20 years ago. It's just a continuation. of what we're doing. But now, you know, we're starting to make some progress on them. We've completed two major sections since 2017, which is about as much as we'd completed prior to that. So these things take a little time to do. They take longer to acquire the funds to do them, so it's not a burden for any general levy increases. So we're trying to find ways and funds to do those that we can continue that pattern.
Yeah, we were pretty blessed with the last road that we did. We got the funding that we did from the state.
Yeah, we were very, very fortunate on that. And, you know,
And the feds.
I just think it's, you know, a lot of work from city council and city staff and commissions involved that, you know, we just kept talking with MnDOT and they finally were convinced it was a good project, so.
So as development happens on Sandhill Parkway, we hope to kind of roll that momentum forward.
Yeah, that's true too, and depending on the development, there may have to be some cases where there may have to be cost allocated to the developer. They may have to share in some of the cost if they want it done in their time frame. You know, for example, in the one we just recently finished, there weren't any assessed costs, but one of the developers donated, his contribution was 7 acres of land. Now, some of it had some soils issues, but if you look at what the land prices were for other properties that are sold there, which was around $100,000 an acre, that's a pretty significant contribution. But we're going to be looking at every way we can to fund these things without placing any more of a burden on the taxpayer.
Thank you. Let's move to item 8, City Council report.
Brian?
Well, Steve usually does them, but I know one significant event that we did have from the last meeting, and as a segue, we had ribbon cutting on our new road, Sandhill Parkway, on, is it the 25th, October 25th? 29th. And I was pretty impressed with how many people attended our ribbon cutting for a road. There were some big names that came out, some big players in the city, and altogether there's probably 40, 45 people there. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, we had the sheriff, Mr. Stewart out there, that he himself came out, and we had our Commissioner Julie Bradstead, we had State Senator Kalbar, I believe he is. Representative. Yep. We had some bigwigs from MnDOT come out, some other people from the county. Steve, if you know any others, but I was really, really impressed that all those people would make time to come out for a ribbon cutting for a road. You know, we joke about ribbon cuttings for a road, but it's really well received. I was very happy to see that support behind it. And Steve gave a wonderful speech saying, you know, what this ribbon cutting actually is. It's not just for the road, but it's actually for opening that area up for economic stimulus.
Opportunities.
Opportunities, yes. And so that was a good day, good ribbon cutting. I don't necessarily have anything else prepared as far as what happened in the city.
We didn't have a whole lot going on this last month, but,
No.
the next city council meeting, we have the budget hearing, final budget hearing, approve the final budget, so.
So we have that to look forward to. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving. That'll be coming up before we know it. It's still a week and a half out, but the year speeds up about this time. So if you have anything else to add, Ed?
That's all I have, too.
Yeah,
And for those of you that haven't had the opportunity to drive that, this is some drone footage that we received as a donation from a former council member. It's a very nice project, and it went extremely well. We had a good contractor, very few issues, and it went really, really smooth, and I think we've got a product that's going to help us out quite a bit in the future. I think as soon as the road was opened up, there was a for sale sign that went up here on the corner, so. For some property, but, you know, the name, when you look at this, you can see why you all came up with the name Parkway.
The road gets used. Every time I've been out, every time I see at least one car on it, so.
Connexus has got the lights installed around the cul-de-sac and the intersection.
Yeah,
The two lights on this strip right here at these intersections and the elevage things, they're waiting on them. I think they have the two lights installed, one at the corner of 65 and 22, and the other one in the curve before you get there, so.
yeah, they don't have them on yet, but
No.
they're up.
But hopefully that should be lit up very soon.
All right.
Good, thank you. There's no further discussion?
make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion is seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.